In 1962, Amazing Fantasy number 15 hit the comic stand. Announced to be the final book, it would serve to help the creator, Dan Lee, to project a concept of a teenage youth who, gifted by a miraculous radioactive spider bite, would gain incredible power, but learned that with great power had to come with great responsibility. This is indeed the tale of the spectacular, sensational, and indeed amazing friendly neighborhood, Spider-Man. He has become a worldwide phenomenon, reaching live television, to video games, to theme park attractions, stunt shows, and in 2002, just 40 years after Peter Parker donned the suit and took flight across New York and to the hearts of many, a film franchise would begin that no one ever dreamed would be this ambitious. Welcome, one and all, to Web-trospective, 20 years of Spider-Man in film.
Greetings, true believers. Welcome back to another episode of Web-trospective, where we're already a little ways along, and we're getting to the more interesting parts now because, again, we're dealing with 20 years of Spidey, so it gets exciting at every twist and turn. I'm your host, OTCat79, a.k.a. Chris, joined by my usual co-host, Derek, a.k.a. Dark Neon.
Behold, the untold story of... Wait, we're just going to tell the same story again?
That's right, and we're
another level. I thought I thought you were gonna be like dealing with Spider-Man 4. I mean, like, yeah, Spider-Man 3 didn't garner that well with audiences, but it still was a big deal. It was a big summer blockbuster hit. So, where is it?
Oh yeah, yes. As many of you know, we're here to talk about the turning point for the Spider-Man franchise, the first ever reboot within a decade. Because normally when you hear about remakes or reboots, they happen well after a property's past its prime, like 20 years, maybe 30 years. But this was within almost 10 years to the month of when the original Spider-Man came out in the cinemas. So due to a rough and painful development cycle, eventually the decision was made to, get him, but we'll get to that in more detail. But yeah, we're talking about Amazing Spider-Man, which celebrated its 10th rotation around the sun this year. Oh, by the way, as of this recording, Spider-Man has officially reached the 60-year mark. With August 10th being the anniversary of when Amazing Fantasy number 15 was published. I just went to a birthday myself, so that's why we're a little bit behind on this. But it's needless to say, this is a really interesting one for me. Just from the concept alone. So, like he said, let's start with Spider-Man 4. I'm sure Derek did a lot of digging for this one.
Yeah, digging. Just gotta get through all these piles of messy things. Actual Jason Takes Manhattan, the Scream, Game of Thrones film. No, we're not gonna talk about that one. Here he is. Okay. So, basically, what some people might know is that there were some ideas to make a movie that involved a vulture-like character, although this iteration is the Vultress, which is character is Felicia. Wait, so Sam was literally just going to combine two different villains to come up with a new one?
That always works out.
Wait, why does that sound familiar? Looking at Whiplash over at Iron Man 2.
Yeah, Vanko was Crimson Dynamo mixed with Whiplash, so that happened. But yeah, I mean, there was going to be a lot of concepts, like including, like I said, Ben Kingsley as the Vulture, and his daughter was going to be Felicia Harding, who would become the Vultress. Which there is a Vultress, but she's not Felicia Harding, so it's it's a little strange, but there was a lot of things that got up. Things really heated up in the last few recent years when unused storyboards from what was going to be Spider-Man 4 actually came out to show us more of what the picture was probably going to be about. Because when they were making Spider-Man 3, Sam kind of had the vision to make Spider-Man 3 like a preamble to the thing that would happen in Spider-Man 4. And then, of course, the pressure came in, and then the Venom. So here's the biggest reason that Spider-Man 4 never came to pass. But at the time, Sam truly did not believe he could, because he was so burned out from Spider-Man 3. He thought I needed some recovery time, and then I can go in and jump in on this one and get it out to you at a later date. And Sony was like, we already got the date for 2012 primed and ready. There's like this train ain't stopping. So Sam pretty much said, well, I guess this is where our stop is. That's really there was no bad split. It was really just because Sam really felt that if I did force myself to do this, he would probably turn in an inferior product, and he has too much respect for the fans to even do that. So it was unfortunate circumstances.
Which is sad because Sam even like tossed out the idea of like bringing his like longtime friend Bruce Campbell to actually become Quentin Beck, aka Mysterio, which honestly would have been fucking phenomenal if it turned out like all these cameo appearances were exactly Quentin all this time.
Screwing with Parker. But yeah,
but they're also going to finally actually have the Kurt Connors character that we saw in Spidey 2 and 3 to actually get his lizard moment, which technically he still managed to get if you played that janky ass Spider-Man 3 game. Yeah.
Oh, so John Malkovich was the guy they were considering to play the Vulture. So that would have been interesting. It was funny because John Malkovich was actually one of the guys that was considered for the Goblin back in the day.
And there was even concept art that had him going up against the C and D list villains like Shocker, Prowler, and Rhino.
Yeah, that would have been fun to see. And they even had Anne Hathaway flirting with the idea of being Black Cat, which is very funny because in 2012 she ended up playing a feline-themed criminal anyway with Selena Kyle in The Dark Knight Rises.
Still waiting on the Black Cat versus Catwoman death battle.
Yeah.
Just recently this year, Raimi had actually revealed that he planned to include Kraven the Hunter in the film. Jeez, if you thought Spider-Man 3 was full of villains, this one really takes the cake.
So I'm reading things. Since Raimi reportedly went through 4 revisions of the script with different writers and still hated it. So it was in 2010 that Sony decided to put it out of its misery. But there was a lot of like development issues of what they were trying to do. Because here's what I'm reading. Sam Raimi's thoughts on the film. Raimi admitted to being exhausted with a tremendous amount of delegation needed to make gigantic movies like the Spider-Man films. However, it only came down to an inability to get together a suitable story that led him to pass on the first installment of the blockbuster franchise. It was really the most amicable and undramatic of breakups. It was simply that we had a deadline that I couldn't get the story to work on a level that I wanted it to work. I was very unhappy with Spider-Man 3, and I wanted to make Spider-Man 4 to end on a very high note. The best Spider-Man film of them all, but I couldn't get the script together in time due to my own failings. And I said to Sony, I don't want to make a movie that is less than great. So I think we shouldn't make this picture. Go ahead with your reboot, which you've been planning anyway. So then Pascal said back, thank you. Thank you for not wasting the studio's money, and I appreciate your candor. So we left on the best of terms, both of us trying to do the best thing for fans, the good name of Spider-Man and Sony Studios. So thankfully it wasn't some dramatic, tug of war or some, disputes that usually end up with these people like splitting apart. So it was the most friendliest of breakups.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of wraps up the Raimi lineup for now, anyways. But yeah, I guess that means Sony is just gonna have to make do and start from scratch here, which of course leads us to talk about reboots. And everyone thinks a reboot is a good idea, right? Never been a bad reboot ever in the history of. I can't even keep a straight face with that one.
Every now and then you get a one that like surprisingly shocks everybody. For example, 2005. Everybody thought you can't make the cape and cowl fly again after the embarrassment that was what killed the dinosaurs with Batman and Robin. But then along comes a noir filmmaker by the name of Christopher Nolan, wanted to take a realistic approach to Batman with a script by David S. Goyer, and boom, you get Batman Begins, which is a good movie when you look at it. It kind of turned around a superhero game. It came right after Spider-Man 4, 2 and all that stuff. So yeah, but then it led to greater things like the Dark Knight and stuff like that. So that was probably I think that's what made Sony think we can do that. Hell, Sony successfully revitalized one of their own brands that was kind of going through tough times. I mean, I don't know if you could come back from water surfing with bad CGI waves behind you while a giant laser melts an ice palace. I think Derek knows exactly what I'm talking about with that one. Die Another Day. Oh, but when we were watching that, Derek thought we started off so good. He actually said, "How did we get here?" Because it was like it went from caring to once we get to that ice palace, it was completely cartoony for a Bond film, where it opened up with him being a Korean prisoner of war.
It's like a director is working on it, and then all of a sudden some secret agent came in and piano wired him to death, and replaced it with the goofy way to say, "Here, do an anniversary movie."
And then, so they successfully rebooted the Bond franchise with a more back to basics, hard edged approach with Casino Royale, which tells the story of James Bond, like his getting his 00 status, but set in the present day. And it had a much more harder edge to it than the Brosnan films or the Moore films. So it made people think back to Sean Connery's days, or even just as fierce, like the novel character. And that led off to a successful franchise, which only ended that its run about a few years ago. So it's a good on them for that. So Sony does have on their hands something that shows, hey, we could restart, build back better. And so they were planning it for Spider-Man, because even Sam said in the breakup, like, just go ahead and do your reboot since it was in the works.
So yeah, we guess we should. Honestly,
But what's
I was trying to look up any like ideas and concepts that Sony might have been thrown around to handle this reboot, but it's just kind of clean cut, straightforward. Honestly, like maybe minor things might have been changed. Like at one point, people thought that they were gonna have Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy be involved, do the whole like love interest conflict thing, but even they kind of like burned that down pretty fast. It's like, nope, it's just gonna be Gwen.
here's another one that you might find interesting. It says this is from animatic producer David E. Duncan, who worked on Spider-Man 4, uploaded animatics of the Castle Project, and he said, one of half a dozen animatics are produced for the ill-fated fourth Raimi film. Studio politics, creative differences, and bad internet reactions to John Malkovich's The Vulture caused the plug to be pulled at December 2009, early in the prep stage. However, 1 month later, Sony moved forward with the reboot. So he later deleted the animatic from his page, but it can still be found on YouTube. But yeah, it said that there was a lot that went on. So for the development of Amazing Spider-Man, that was where they were going to go. I figured they figured they'd go back with that back to basics approach that they were doing. Because again, it says that Columbia Pictures and Marvel announced that rather than continue the earlier saga, they were rebooting the series with a new cast and crew. Industry reports claim that Raimi admitted he cannot get to schedule release and retain creative integrity. Avi Arad, Matt Tolmach, and Lara Ziskin continued as producers. And they said that screenwriter Steve Knowles did apologize for the script, saying he declined the opportunity to be re-entered as a favorite to filmmakers. I also really wanted to write for Emma Stone because I like to write for women. I particularly like Emma, so I did the character and dialogue, and that was enjoyable for me. So I had my hand in it and did a little plot work, but a lot of the plot was done. So writer director Paul Feeks of Web invited me to do writing for movies, one of the high school things, but yeah, there was they moved on this pretty fast after that thing could have gone south for them. So it's interesting to hear when stuff like that happens.
So yeah, basically they just had to be able to retell the origin of Peter Parker, which, to be fair, it kind of brings back to mind the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book lines, which kind of did that thing, but they also kind of like um, kind of made it feel like it's like the forces of the universe kind of preordained certain things, like it was actually Oscorp that engineered the spider, which would then lead to not only the birth of Spider-Man, but also his greatest nemesis, the Green Goblin. So,
Oh yeah.
like, you could definitely watch this show. You could definitely tell that there's a lot of notion to the Ultimate Spider-Man, even though they call it the Amazing Spider-Man, which is the mainline 616 Marvel Universe Spidey.
So let's go back, wind the clocks back a little bit. So when you heard they were remaking Spider-Man, I mean not remaking, redoing Spider-Man again with the Amazing movies, what was your initial thoughts?
I was kind of bummed that we weren't getting a proper Spider-Man 4, but after my initial disappointment for like the hype of Spider-Man 3, I kind of understood where they were coming from. I also felt that there was actually enough time. I know a lot of people might say, it's like, oh, it's only been like, how many, 5 years? It kind of was. But to be fair, it wouldn't be like the only time, like, it wouldn't be the shortest reboot we've ever seen for concept. Take into account the Batman, who just went from like, hey, we have the DCU one, to all of a sudden it's like, yeah, you know what? Let's just actually kind of reinvent with Robert Pattinson.
And that ended up trying out pretty well. And so yeah, but
And also I felt like reading up on initial ideas, the concepts of what they were going for, it definitely sounded a lot of evoking of the Ultimate Spider-Man, which I felt was a pretty good move, since I loved reading the Ultimate Spider-Man comic books. Those were my Spider-Man books growing up, and I felt like doing a more realistic, grounded approach to Spider-Man, whereas Sam dealt with it in a let's make a comic book movie be like a comic book movie. It would definitely feel like it's not like, oh, okay, we're just doing this again. It's just hitting the same highs and lows and blah blah blahs. So we would definitely get a big different change, and also it'd give us probably a new Spidey costume to look towards. Maybe it would actually look a little bit more closer to the comics, which what didn't happen here, but it definitely happened to follow up the sequel.
oh yeah. So me, I don't know. I was like, okay, but I remember showing that they showed that poster, which was just that poster of the character in shadow with the shadow outline creating the elongated spider logo, and that had my curiosity.
And I remember people were essentially unimpressed with the behind a set photo of Andrew Garfield with the costume on, all looked up worse for wear. He's looking like he's been through hell and walking through the streets. And obviously, people suddenly make jokes like, "Oh, great, Edward Cullen is Spider-Man."
His hair, yeah, I was one of those guys back in the day. And it's funny because eventually we got Everett Cullen actually playing Batman, and that shit actually happened again. People never change in decades, but
And I was sitting here going like, you do know in some comic iterations, Peter Parker's hair does look like that, right?
yeah. So like it's the untold story, like I said, but it's kind of what we know. But uh, even the previews were very mysterious, saying how his truth's about to be revealed and stuff. Like people seeing stuff like secrets have a cost, or do you have any idea what you really are? We'll get into that because
If you want the truth, Peter, come and get it.
we want to come and get it, and we never got it.
We'll get to that, but it's definitely going to be fun ripping into Sony a little bit, because even though we watched it and we realized how very good movie it was, it could have been a hell of a lot better if they actually stuck to what Mark initially wanted.
Yeah, so let's talk about him. Mark Webb, which is very funny that his name is Webb. People say, now there's a sign that he was destined to make this movie. Just some people think like maybe they didn't want him for his directing ability. Maybe they just wanted to have a guy named Webb direct one of their movies. But he was well known for his like teen comedy coming of age stories like 500 Days of Summer and The Spectacular Now. Funnily enough, Spectacular Now starred Miles Teller, who went on to become Mr. Fantastic in that ill-fated Fantastic movie. Sorry. Wait, let me see. Yeah. So that wasn't him. My bad. Oops. Okay, I brought them up for no reason. So 500 Days of Summer was like his big thing that really got him going. Because again, that was a comedy drama film, But it does have Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who played Robin in Batman. We don't know he was Robin until the last second drop, but yeah. Uh, and that's what that's what got him the job, and it must be crazy for you to go from little indie thriller drama to hey, you're directing a big superhero movie now. Like, just imagine the leap from that. In fact, in the 2010s, that happened a lot where you'd be a guy who made like a little project, and people say, "Hey, that's cool. Here's millions of dollars for you to do one of these big franchises." It happened with Gareth Edwards going from a small little film called Monsters with effects he made in his garage to directing Godzilla in 2014.
Didn't it also happen to Edgar Wright with all of a sudden, hey, here's Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
And then he was going to do Ant-Man, but creative differences happened there. And it even happened with there was another guy who had just done one film and he ended up going big too. Matt Reeves, he was on TV and stuff, and he ended up doing Cloverfield, and ended up going from there to doing Planet of the Apes, and a successful reboot trilogy. So,
and then of course the aforementioned Batman reboot we talked about.
Yeah, so it happens every now and then where you get to jump up to the big leagues when you impress people that much. So either people think there's a mindset behind picking these little directors. Either you're doing it because you really believe in their vision and they'll bring something new to the table that no one's expected, or maybe you think with their inexperience they'll be easier to control. So I'm sure Avi Arad would really like to butt in a lot if because you got an established director like Sam saying yes and no. So if you got a newbie and he says, "No, trust me, the fans would like this," you'd be more like, okay, maybe. So it's a two-way street if you want to be a first-time up-and-coming director going from little indie project to really big film. But I think Mark Webb really handled this idea pretty well with the giving us because when we were watching this movie, his moments with the just it feels so natural whenever the school scenes happen because you're like it does feel like you stumbled in the middle. Like I said, even if all the lines were written, it feels like every one of them was like like improv on the spot, and it feels really natural.
Yeah. So I guess we should also pretty much let's see what's next on the list here.
What were your thoughts on how Mark Webb handled this story?
I felt he managed to toe the line between like giving the people what they kind of expected for Spider-Man, but also adding a little bit more, like giving a little bit more to like. Obviously, we were here to see like Peter Parker getting like inspired by it, but it's obviously like kind of second in the fact that Peter's just trying to find the answers, looking towards why his parents had disappeared and what made them like end up having their ill-gotten fate, and finding out that there's like this conspiracy and all this that leads up to the actual spider that got him the powers, and also would eventually lead to this. It literally just ends in this big spiraling domino effect of this comic book plot that actually feels a little bit more grounded, if it were.
Well, yeah, because that's the thing about reboots. They said not only do we want it, like they wanted to try to be as different from the Raimi films as possible, because the Raimi films were bright, cheesy, and colorful and cartoony, and at this point, superhero movies were kind of still evolving to allow for that to be the norm again. Because we had that weird period where everyone was afraid of doing that.
Yeah, that was weird. That was really weird. Kind of like that short period um, after films like Hulk and Fantastic Four flopped, and we had Batman Begins rise up, where people thought like, maybe we should actually have darker superheroes.
And then Dark Knight opened the door for that to happen.
But at the same time, that also would be when Iron Man started. So that was kind of like a whole like, should we go dark? But then there's this Iron Man movie which just felt really character driven and actually felt honest. But we'll get to talk about the MCU later.
But yeah, so
Needless
you're
to say, they were already. Needless to say, they already did the campy comic booky Spider-Man, so they felt like, okay, well, if we're gonna be able to stand out and be our own thing, we have to kind of ground ourselves and be a relatable Spider-Man movie.
But keep in mind, while this is a little more darker and has more edge, this is not a grim, dark, joyless fest. There actually is a lot of heart and fun in parts. So it gets dark and serious where it needs to, but it gets a little bit of joy where it has
Let's
to.
let's just say that you won't hear Spidey keep brooding on a rooftop, calling himself the Spider, or finding out that Gwen Stacy slept with Norman Osborn at a young age,
What were they
like the
thinking?
comics do.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah. So yeah, the main story is, yeah, as you know, Peter Parker is an exceptional youth that his parents disappeared under mysterious circumstances, leaving in a hurry. So he lives with his aunt and uncle, and he's always been an outcast because of that abandoned thing. But he eventually finds things that lead him on a path to go back to finding out what happened by going to Oscorp and getting bit by that fated spider, which gives him incredible abilities. And of course, once after Uncle Ben gives him advice and everything like that, Uncle Ben unfortunately is killed, and Spider-Man doesn't use his powers for good at first. No, in fact, he starts using them to try and go and get revenge on who did it, and he starts acting like an out of control vigilante.
Which definitely kind of lead credence to the police kind of treating him as a hardened vigilante, whereas in the comic book the comic book movie that Raimi did was kind of like the people were kind of responding to the fact that there was this guy that can shoot webs out of his wrists and swing around like high-rising skylines, rooftops,
Like
and all that, and
like in that montage, you get
bad guys end up in huge like swaths of webs like flies.
like like in the montage in the Raimi film, you got everybody's mostly saying how this guy's a hero and he helps. You get the one or two people saying, yeah, he's kind of a weird guy, but other than that,
He
everyone's like,
stinks, and I don't like him.
yeah. Other than that, everybody's like Gaga for Spider-Man. Whereas here in this universe, it's kind of two-way split. The people, the everyday person, there's a beautiful montage where people are like looking at footage and talking about it, and they're like talking, interested in the spider. But then you got the police captain saying how, yeah, this guy's doing stuff because he thinks he can, do the law in his hands, but he's not being a jerk about it. But so that also crosses him paths with an old associate of his father's, Dr. Kurt Connors, amputee who's trying to, study cross-species genetic hybridization to like cure wounds and weakness. A radical approach, of course, but does have some promise. And of course, when he meets Parker, it spirals down to a chain reaction of him eventually creating the formula that turns him into the Lizard, which is who spirals him to further into madness. And when Spider-Man realizes this, he has to go and stop him from turning most of New York into lizard people.
And
Yeah, when I say it that,
Gwen Stacy is there.
yeah, and when I say it that way, it does sound a little comic booky, but they make you believe it. They make you buy it.
And not only that, but they kind of, as I said before, they piece it in a way that leads to one thing, leads to another, leads to another. It's always kind of like a superhero drama, soap opera in a way, but without like the hamminess or the stilted camera angles.
Yeah, you're not going to see any superhero in a diner eating a pie saying how good it is.
Well, to be fair, that was a supervillain that did it, but
Yeah, but I'm just laughing. So, but here's the thing that in order to tell this story, they wanted to show that we're not, going back to basics. We're not like just going to be cheap on it. They actually spent a good while on effects, and I think, look, I might be wrong, but looking back at this, there actually might be a lot more practicals than I remembered rewatching it.
I literally have the special features play right now, and I can tell you a lot of things that they're doing, from web swinging to him in the sewers with the web line sensor. This is all practical. This is all real. This is actually happening, which is definitely. I think this is almost a little bit of a step up. I think that Sony knew, even Mark knew, that if they were going to really stand out, they really had to make people believe that this Spider-Man is actually doing these things instead of a computer-generated suit. And
Well,
honestly, the I guess the way the suit looks and how slick it is, a lot of people might have thought like that was be like, okay, this is the easiest way to make it look like the CGI blends in, so they could do all this nonsense. But no, honestly, all this stuff that most of the stuff that they do is like, honest to goodness, real stuff that they do.
Well, I think that comes from Mark Webb's indie sensibilities, because usually when you're an indie, you usually have popsicle sticks and chewing gum as your budget, so you got to make do with what you can get, and when you can get it for real, that leaves a lot less work for you to do. So I think because he likes these very hands-on, he probably wanted to go for that. I want to actually see him in my camera swinging through, because I'm sure you had a couple of times where Sam would tie a guy to a rope and they do the actual swinging, but he wanted more of that comic booky dynamic little whoosh. And Mark really wanted to have, like he said, like sort of like a ballet, like it's kind of a aerial ballet when he would like and I like
It's mostly like a pendulum swing, as it were. It like even in the movie they discuss like how they have to how Spidey should move in a way that it involves a lot of nose diving to accumulate speed to create swings. Because they even at a certain point in the movie, like a big chase towards a certain location would seem easy for like Sam or maybe Spidey to do, but given the way that the buildings were low lying up until a certain point, like it would be impossible without certain additions made.
but yeah, because the New York that
momentum and height.
yeah, the New York that Sam made was more of a hyper stylized comic New York. And while it's not exactly a one for one real New York, it does feel a little more to the ground raw when you watch the New York in Amazing. I think they did film a lot in Vancouver and in New York and stuff for parts, right? Yeah. But so and not only does Spider-Man look good, there's also the opponent, the lizard, which I love how they said they actually bought a real life bearded dragon, and they would say if you need to study how the hand looks, just look at Beatty over here, and he would like be there. The lizard would be there, and they'd like would look at it, and I when I was rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, I could see some of those traits in the way they wanted to make this lizard man. Because let's face it, Lizard is one of those top well-known Spider-Man villains that people always think of. I mean, come on, in the 80s, you had it dominated by that more reptilian, monstrous snout, purple pants, and white shredded lab coat. Like that, we grew up with that in the animated series, so you had to make sure that guy wasn't up to snuff. And one thing that they did is they made a maquette of the lizard based off scans off the actor and the makeup department, and they used it as a ref for when they animate him in CG. It would look just like that, and it actually looks really well. So he actually does look like he's on set most of the time.
Even though, as I'm watching it, they actually had to do a mocap suit, essentially. They had to stand in guy fighting in the high school with Andrew with the tennis ball attached on her. And the dude is pretty like big and beefy there, but yeah, it's basically we even though we did say that like, there was more practical here, it was still kind of like a 50-50 that a certain objects like a certain huge humanoid lizard, which obviously we can't do a practical suit out of unless we want to get accused of it being Godzilla.
Yeah,
Which
they make a lot of jokes.
They make a lot of jokes about it in the movie.
Yeah, you go ahead and go to the fleeing citizens of Tokyo, and I'll deal with the people in New York here, all right?
But there were a lot of people that were kind of miffed that the lizard looks a little bit not lizardy, if to put it finely. Even the big joke is that it looks like a Goomba from the 1983
Goomba! Go
Super Mario
Goomba!
Bros. Movie. But I argue it's like if you actually look back at the older comics, the lizard design is actually a little bit more like the rounder face. Like even the '60s cartoon had it. It's like it had like the face only had a little bit of a snout, but it still kind of retained a human-like visage.
I did
And
notice that the more...
I guess it makes a little bit more sense to see this lizard talking to Peter, announcing that you can save them, I could cure them. without a huge snout just kind of like going with every.
Yeah, otherwise you'd get that Sauron meme. You can like cure cancer or something, but I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs. That's how I imagine the voice sounding for some reason. I'm sure you've seen that. Yeah. So you're right. I guess it does. People say it is a little creepy to see this monstrous thing, but the eyes and the mouth are the most humanoid looking things. So you're like, when you have that staring at you, you're like, that's a little unsettling. So I guess they go.
It's kind of the point. This is. Do you want it to end up looking like this? I certainly wouldn't.
But yeah.
But that's literally the guy's end goal.
So we have that. So the effects work good, but the web slinging looks amazing. So the CG Spider-Man blends with this new suit that beautifully. We don't have a section for it, but we should talk about the beautifully constructed Spider-Man suit, which they said they wanted to go for a more insectoid look, more lanky draw, like the way he was drawn in some comics.
Right, because like it's a back in the day, Steve Ditko did a little bit more realistic drawings as opposed to the likes of Jack Kirby, which is everything's big and pompous and pedantic and all that. But when Steve drew it, it was kind of like more understandable that this is actually a person going through all this, and like the lanky uh, design of the man in the costume. This is like bright, predominant red and blue costume going around and swinging around the city.
Yeah, I think you
Definitely
got.
looks. There's also a little bit going back to Ultimate Spider-Man, where they designed Brian Michael Bendis really designed Spidey to look a little bit more lean, as it were, as if like a lanky geek nerd kind of gained firepower, so his body didn't just bulk up with muscle that came out of nowhere. It's more like a lean muscle, as if he had already had like a protein and a strict diet made.
Yeah, like if he only bulked up in like the 60s and 70s when Romita got a hold of him, and then Todd McFarlane drew him in the 80s and gave him back those insectoid positions where he'd almost be like contorting his wrist and stuff and looking very like you're like Spider-Man must be in a lot of pain or must be in a lot of yoga to get some of those poses that Todd drew him in, if you remember. Him and that damn spaghetti webbing.
Although to be fair, that spaghetti webbing has kind of become iconic.
I know, but people said, I mean, it's not that it was bad, but it's that he said his editor kept saying, Todd, I want you to stop doing that damn spaghetti webbing of yours, and like that just made me do it even more. He said, but yeah, so you're right. The suit is a lot more flexible, but they said they also wanted to say that they wanted to make it look like, a kid could realistically, with the genius of Parker, could realistically look up, sports fabrics, stuff for speed and wind resistance, and incorporate that into his look. And using like sunglasses to like make the lenses for the the eye concept, and like I said, then they adhered it specifically to Andrew's body. So when you see him in the suit, it's like he's pretty much going commando. He admits it's just nothing separating him, all natural Andrew, and the sky is that spider suit. Which if you're eagle-eyed and you don't mean to look, but during behind-the-scenes photos when he's walking, you can kind of sometimes see things standing in attention where they shouldn't be standing when that suit's on.
To be fair, anyone who actually would get a chance to be in a Spidey suit would probably have the same reaction. Anyways,
but oh my gosh, it was amazing.
I should point out quickly, since I talked about the original proto suit, as it were, in the first Spider-Man movie, I guess I could talk about this one, even though they don't show it as much in the movie. But I've been able to play the skin of it in the Amazing Spider-Man game. It is essentially just really stripped down. It's just Andrew in his more grungy clothes, tied up with only a spandex ski mask and like sunglasses covering his face to kind of solve the whole like I know your face, I see your face, and topped off with a beanie cap on top. And it seems like the most minimalistic of like an early Spider-Man suit, but to be fair, he wasn't really thinking of doing the savior of New York. Really, it was more like, hey, I have these powers. There's a man that killed my uncle. Then I'm gonna use these powers to hunt him down.
And you know what's funny is at times that suit can look kind of scary. Like the part when he's menacing the car thief after playing with him, and he like goes up to his face and kills it. You're like, okay, that looks like he wants to hurt people.
Yeah. So when we do actually get this costume, it really, it honestly, I don't know who it was. Like this woman that actually came out from Matrix and the Romeo plus Juliet Baz Luhrmann movies, but she managed to help design the suit to actually look bold in night scenes. Like most of this movie is actually in the night when Spidey does his things. The only thing he does is when the lizard like kind of jumps him at high school. So I guess you could say like the Spider-Man dominated the daylight in the Raimi trilogy, whereas in Mark Webb's first movie, you got the night, which definitely kind of meshes a lot of the advertisings and even our thumbnail here, being
Yeah, there's a lot of
on
night.
the night.
Yeah, if you look at all the posters for Raimi's films, even three, where like with the sun or the sunset, those very broad daylight stuff. Then you get the posters of Spider-Man like with the cuts on his throat and reflection on his lenses with the dark sky behind him, saying a story will be revealed. So that's like really, really exciting to show you the different direction you're going. So
And it honestly looks beautiful, and I honestly wish that Andrew had been brought the suit back for when No Way Home happened. But the suit that we got there was like it's good, but we'll talk about it next time. Needless to say, this was definitely a reboot suit that managed. A lot of people were kind of worried if they were just gonna make him just kind of like have a maroon red or a dark like midnight blue suit, and it's just gonna be like really really dark and not looking like Spidey. But they still managed to keep the bright colors.
like it's still Spider-Man, even though they have like the longer emblems and the more like realistic tennis shoes on those foot pads and the gloves looking like athletic gloves. It still looks like Spider-Man, you can say.
Yeah, we should also point out that they also finally decided, okay, to actually stand out, we're actually going to have this Peter Parker be tech savvy enough to create web shooters.
Which fans have been asking for a long time. Like I remember people actually saying like "thank you" when they saw in the trailer he was like twisting a knob on his wrist, and then the web came out. We're like, web shooters, yay! Which
And
Stan Lee admitted that he was always, he loved the idea of the web shooter. Like I love the idea that he would always like run out at the most inopportune moment or cut web block. And like that's as a writer, you're always looking for ways to get your hero in trouble because if the hero is easy all the time, then what are we doing here? But yeah, I always loved inventing things that made the hero's life a little harder. Like he would run out of web at the worst time.
or in this case of the movie, where certain villains would break the web shooters so that they would be inoperable, especially when your final fight is on a very very high tower.
You'd want to have a web line to save you. So yeah, it's really great that we have that Spider-Man. So another thing to add to all this is that we have music by the late great James Horner, who, as we all know, sadly passed away in the mid 2000s when his plane had crashed because he was an avid flyer, and one accident happened. But he was well known for his scores on Braveheart, Titanic, even Aliens, and Star Trek: Wrath of Khan. So the guy's a John was heavy guy who he goes for emotions. That's on heart, and I gotta say the score does really have that emotional chord because it has like this lonely timbre with the piano, but then it has like this hopeful, heroic
Like
horn
da,
motif.
da, 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 na, 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 na,
Yeah, you start
na.
really getting into it, and it gets more triumphant the more he goes in because you start hearing hints of it, but it gets more triumphant after he saves his first like life with the kid. So, and then it comes up with a really great swing motif at the end, and like I said, it's very underrated, but it has a lot of his Hornerisms. Like it has that four-note danger theme that you hear in Avatar and Aliens and Titanic. It has that one choir that sounds like it's lifted straight from Titanic when the cranes are lining up. Because I'm expecting to hear icebergs that ahead. Fun fact: Mr. Fantastic from Fantastic Four, the Tim Story movies, first appeared in Titanic as one of the guys on the lifeboat asking for survivors. And then when I saw him when I saw the movie again, I'm like, that's Mr. Fantastic. Funny how he keeps coming up. But yeah, I know we normally talk about like the music because Danny Elfman. It's kind of hard to top a guy like Danny Elfman, but I thought James Horner did a respectable job in his score over here. And I've actually before I was a little miffed on it, but not too like thrilled about it. But on rewatching and re-listening, I thought this score really does work for this version of the character.
Like it's the one thing that's actually lived in this realistic story to actually rise up to be like a superhero story.
And I thought the score, because yeah, the score has more of darker tones and more menacing tones, and during the whole chaotic scenes like Uncle Ben getting shot and stuff like that, or the lizard talking to himself has more of a sinister undertone. But once the Spider-Man is like listening to a message from his uncle, or like climbing up doing handstands, you get that little. It's a fun motif because you want to have fun with these movies. You can't always be droning broodness or tune-up pianos all the time, and only have your one optimistic score be when you take flight through the snow. Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud? We'll talk about that guy in the next movie because he actually scored that movie along with 5 other people that I'm surprised scored that movie. But
I might be talking the whole way for that topic when we get there.
because there's a lot of stuff that they do musically in that one. The next movie got too big for its britches, if you ask me. But we're not talking about that sequel. We're talking about this one that was a modest reboot that we're surprised even worked in hindsight, looking back at it, because I remember being there for when it happened, and I was like, I didn't think much of it. But looking back, I can definitely see there was something truly special. So let's go ahead and unpack what made it special by talking about the cast here, because when you look at it, there are a lot of things that were either strong or weak, but one thing that was definitely strong was the cast, and we got to start with the man in the hour, because normally we save the man of the hour for last, but I think since he's the new guy on the block, we really got to give props to Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man.
But first, this has been a while. Let's actually discuss who could have been Spider-Man instead of Andrew. There's actually a couple of names here that kind of surprised me. It might surprise you when you hear them.
Okay.
One, so there's names like Frank Delane, Josh Hutcherson, Jamie Bell, and Aldrin Enric.
Solo?
Yep.
Well, funny fact, Jamie Bell, I think that guy ended up becoming the Thing in Fan4 God, why the fuck are those 4 keep coming up for me? It's like it's almost like the director of one of the movies had to direct it, but then dropped out.
Other names that came up were Aaron Johnson and Anton Yelchin.
Oh, Chekhov, who has a very Tom Holland vibe now that I look about it. Huh. He was also young Kyle Reese in Terminator.
But needless to say, when Mark saw Andrew's ability to kind of have like this nervousness, down to earth, stuttering, reverb, stuttering talk, the way it's kind of like this like it sounds like this much more this delivery whenever he's talking with Gwen Stacy, or how he can have a very grounded, very intense talk with familiar figures like his Uncle Ben or Aunt May.
He's very natural, and if you want to see a good stretching of his acting ability, even before Spider-Man, just watch The Social Network. Yes, Jesse Eisenberg ended up dominating with his portrayal as the rather sociopathic Mark Zuckerberg, but the partner Hector that Andrew played felt very Peter Parker to me. So I did thought that he's really good, and he's grown as a phenomenal actor ever since.
So you want to admit to the folks listening that you weren't really keen into Andrew for a while until a certain movie you watched?
Yeah, I was one of those guys saying this guy was not doing it for me, because let's face it, there are people in 2 camps when this movie came out. Okay, this guy's a new take. I think he's different from Toby, but I like it. And then this guy's all like,
"Boo on you! Bring back Toby!"
Or then he's he's a good Spider-Man, but is Peter? And because here's one thing that we gotta talk about the Spider-Man that people probably been asking for months. Because let's face it, there was a funny thing going on with all three old Spidey movies where they would say Spider-Man only has one joke per movie because because in the comics he is very well known for driving his enemies crazy by quipping at him.
And also, there's kind of a chatterbox at times, especially when he's talking with himself.
And that was always so that I think the movie really emphasized it because I mean one of the best scenes that exemplifies it is the car thief banter back and forth. Oh, you're going out the window. That's very nice, man. Very nice. Yeah, motherfucker, like, you a cop? Really? Me? Guy in a red, blue uniform. You think I'm a cop? Like,
no one sees the grass costume to the mask.
Yeah. So I thought he got that really well. In fact, in the sequel, he got that even more better. But yeah, so he definitely got that carefree in the world. And I gotta say this, his holler, whenever he swings, is infectious. I can't describe why. You just go that woo. He just when he does it, it's just I can't. You feel good for him. It's like the flight scene in Man of Steel when you see Henry Cavill smiling as he's flying through the canyons. You can't help but smile with him. So when you hear Andrew give that woohoo as he's going head first into a possible death and last minute save with the web, you just can't help but feel elated with him. And
I guess we should also discuss that people weren't really keen on the fact that they took him away from being like the geek and nerd and always being picked on. But as Mark Webb described, like at the time that they were shooting it, the term nerd has kind of changed in the grand scheme of things because, like, let's face facts, pop culture was kind of blowing up around the 2000s, and like even insane to this point. Read nowadays, so nerd is kind of like a not really a thing that you can just go around picking on people for.
Well, because everyone's a nerd at this point, for crying out loud. Like,
we're a bunch of nerds, and we're not like as like pathetic or like.
We're not Mandark or Poindexter.
We're not these types to be pushed around like a pre-bit Spidey.
So they were going more for the outcast aspect, which Ultimates had in spades. And so he has that social outcast look. There's a lot of people who probably are like Peter with that, don't really talk that much to the popular kids in the crowd. You're kind of looked over. So they were going more for that angle.
But at the same time, it's like he's not kind of like searching out to be somebody. He just kind of wants to be by himself and just do his own thing.
It's because of the whole lost parents thing. So that dominated his mindset.
Although there are people that were just kind of like, but did he have to be skateboarding though?
Well, like skateboarding was a click.
And honestly, at this time, who was skateboarding at that time? Like, there's like barely a hobby anyone was going to nowadays after like the Tony Hawk crash.
Well, there's still Thrasher skating stores, and those things will have like anime shirts and stuff. So. But
yeah, okay. It wasn't as big as it was essentially.
All right, but yeah, so now the funny thing is he's very natural. Like he'll do stuff like I was gonna say I work here, but I can see that you work here, so you wouldn't buy it. Like he made that feel very natural, and we always thought he was a little too proud and too cocky, but it made sense that he's projecting because in reality he's more of a scared little boy because he never knew why his parents left, so he kind of had to project this water slides off my back vibe, but in reality he's probably hurting inside.
And needless to say, when he also has a little bit of a fascination with Gwen Stacy, who's not like a popular girl, but she's definitely like someone who's like definitely stands out if you're like really interested in what she is. And what she is very smart, very academic, very sassy in her own way.
I realized that because the Gwen in Spectacular Spider-Man, a fantastic piece of media, was kind of the cute little nerdy sidekick to Parker and his buddy. So that was always cute to have. So this Gwen's kind of like a more glammed up version of that. It's more in line with her portrayal in the 60s. But again, she fits as a modern natural girl. And Emma Stone brings her wonderfully to life. We should probably talk about her since she's kind of intertwined with Parker. So we end up mixing both of them together with this. But oh gosh,
But it's understandable to see as the two actors kind of dated behind the scenes, as it were. The two were inseparable at the time.
And oh my gosh, just to ask him during this rewatch, I kept on gushing about how cute she was, but how natural she felt with her dialogue and everything. And she was already known for her other movies like Easy A and other stuff where she got that kind of, click girl vibe. So again, I thought that they played it up really well, and the best scenes were always, like, because let's face it, I love the Raimi films, but some people always took issue with the back and forth that Mary Jane and Peter would have in that one. So when you have a relationship that actually feels like, oh, thank God, you're actually rooting for them, like, because it's more relatable. I think you feel it with everybody who I've ever heard in every superhero circles. They bring up romances that work. Like Superman, Christopher Reeve Superman and Margot Kidder's Lois Lane always worked. They bring up Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield as those things were really interconnected in the way that you bought and believed for. So that's why when you get heartbreaking scenes later, like when a dying father makes him promise never to deal with her, when she gives him that sad look on his face when he's saying, I can't be with you, she realizes, oh, he told you, didn't he? And you go like, she sells that so well. She's also good on the improv spot, not improv spot. She's good on making things feel very natural, like the bit where she has to cover for the fact that the man that they want search warrant for is hiding in her room. So she's told her dad, "It's chocolate. I don't like chocolate." And he goes, "This is a girl who wanted to have a chocolate house and everything." So that'd be unnatural and fattening. Just the way she delivers that, it feels very real.
And it is also kind of refreshing that. So this is kind of like a big moment. It's like usually in superhero mediums, the hero has to keep their identity a secret. Their identity is usually a secret in the first movie, only known to the villain at like a certain second or third act. But here, Peter decides to hell with it and actually goes to trust Gwen to show her that the person that her father is like hunting down is actually a good person because she hangs out with him.
And you're right. Like, I think we're thinking, when you saw him do that web line and kiss her, she says, "You're the Spider-Man." You're thinking, thank God we don't have to do that stupid dance stuff. How come you're never here and you're always disappearing and all that stuff? And the fact that she knows, you go like, that's so refreshing. Like, it's funny because the secret identity thing could be really good for drama purposes, but if you overuse it or do it in a way like people say, it's like people say with Lois, like the writer said and look up in the sky. After all these years with her, it was starting to make her look completely stupid. And you can't be a class A reporter and be stupid. So same thing too. Like, you can't be a top of your class academic and be stupid.
Not realize this guy is like this loner might have a little bit of something going on. But it does also feel heartening that when she asks Peter, who shows her the spider that bit him, that gave him the powers, who else knows about this? Oh, it's just you. Really?
And she does funny cute things when like the Uncle Ben publicly says he has a picture of you on his computer, and then later she says it's crazy kid, or he doesn't have it, and he says, so you don't have me on your picture? Oh well, I do, but it's chess club, and I like how he has to cover for it, but to not come off as creepy.
Also that she actually also has a stance that she has connections with Kirk Connors as well, being that she works for him at Oscorp, where Peter learns this when he sneaks in as
Rodrigo. Oh, that poor guy got hauled out, screaming his identity. Like, oh, and even Andrew Saul's Spider-Man Peter having a bit of a sorry bro face look on his face when that happens.
And like she knows who he is, but she doesn't bust him. He's like, it's honestly harmless of him just kind of being curious and learning that his father did work with Cars at some point, so he's just kind of just being curious about things. Although when he wanders off, and even when he runs into her again, he realizes like, okay, I guess I did kind of worn out my chances. So let's give you this badge and walk out.
Yeah, another part. Yeah. So again, it would be very easy to make her role almost a little too sassy, a little too likable, but they straddle the line well with Emma's natural chemistry and the way she works with Andrew. So I thought that they worked really well. And since we already mentioned it, we should probably talk about.
One more thing. I do love the fact that when she knows that the bad guy is coming to get a dangerous weapon that could weaponize a pathogen that could create other lizards, that she has to keep the thing out of his way, and is armed with a lighter and a like spray can, and just like as soon as the lizard like opens the door and sees her, she just lights the sucker on fire. And of course, he just waits it off nonchalantly and he takes the thing away from her. But the fact that she still did that was just kind of baller.
Then I jokingly said, "Here's my normal playthroughs of Alien Isolation." But yeah, so since we talked about him, we talked about Rhys Ifans as Dr. Kurt Connors, aka the Lizard, who is a hero a villain that Raimi's been trying. So they've been really trying to push him hard because he was always in the animated projects. Amazing, Spectacular Spider-Man had a wonderful episode all about the Lizard. I always loved the way they handled the Lizard in that version.
Yeah. I do remember like my first having to deal with this lizard was through the Spider-Man 2 video game. Oh, maybe this was a lizard. This one damaging the Hulk proud. Come on, give me a sign here. Let me know you're okay. Oi, relax!
And then, of course, there was, Spider-Man 3's very infamous. We're talking about giant lizards, Parker. Giant
lizards!
And then for those of you listening, I actually did the over-exaggerated arm motion that required to go with that animation, where everybody's either dead-eyed, dead-faced, or they're wacky, wavy, inflatable tube men, like on the set of Nope. But yeah. So what's great about this is that he's not a complete a-hole. Because every versions of the Connors in any medium, be it comic book or animated property, so that this guy is a brilliant, bright, hopeful guy, but life dealt him a bad hand, pardon the phrase. But life dealt him a bad hand by taking away his arm. And in some versions he's like a non-vet, in other versions he was horrible accident, stuff like that would lead to him losing an arm. So his lifelong quest is to try to make the human body be able to repair it and regenerate limbs, and that's always been his thing in the comics and in this thing in the shows and stuff.
So as we mentioned, we had the humanoid lizard look to him, but it was very interesting that they went with the lizard as the first foe that Peer fights, since both of them were products of the cross genetics experimentation, whereas Peer got the more like streamlined, more focused spiral one, and Connors, unfortunately, with the ill timing of the company heads, you're really impatient to get their alien insert shadow figure for actor to be picked out at a later time. Norman Osborn is dying.
Yeah, we were like, oh, big the goblin is here, and oh, he's dying already, huh? How about that? I like how they don't even have him casted, so they had like a shadowy figure for Norman Osborn's our founder here at Oscorp, and I'm like, they keep mentioning him as a specter that hangs over the whole thing going on with Connors and his motivations.
But due to a certain chance, P finds a photo of Dr. Connors with his father in a photo in the bag, and he decides to track him down. And Connors admits that the reason why he stayed away was that he had a ire and jealousy, and when his parents had that unfortunate accident, he felt like there's like a really, really rushed mix of emotions that he felt it was best to just stay away from it.
But yeah, he is quite amicable because I like it when he's talking about potential ways to improve humanity. People going like cybernetics, stem cells, and it's when Parker suggests cross-species genetics that he gets interested. Like, oh, this guy's really brilliant, and hell, even think maybe it's subtle acting, but even he kind of recognizes him slightly looking like Richard with the glasses on.
And so, needless to say, this creation of the lizard was in part Peter's doing too, although it wasn't out of like ill-begotten manner. It was just like honestly, just like he didn't realize that he was just going to test the formula like outright. We were focusing on like testing on the mouse, and even then, the mouse ended up having some side effects afterwards.
So, oh man. And like I said, it's one of the best acted scenes. I think Derek heard me gushing about it as we were watching it. Is when after the Oscorp representative pushes his hand by saying, oh, "God, I'm sorry with the puns. I'm not coming at on purpose." But he pushed him by saying how we're gonna do human experimentation. He said, "We still gotta figure out all this stuff formula. You said it works, right? Yeah, we got one prospect." And he's like, "Okay, well, we'll do human testing at the VA. Maybe they tell him it's just a placebo shot or something." Flu shot. So he thought, I'm not gonna let him do this. So he decided to test it on himself. And when he gets up after passing out from the exposure to it, he feels the stump where a lump where his hand empty air used to be, and he sees this skin shed. And he just pulls it out, and you see this beautiful newly regenerated hand that looks almost like fetal tissue. It's played very mystically and wonderfully, and I love the part when he little details. I love the detail when he pokes the hot heat of the lamp and actually reacts to it. He hisses and goes. He laughs, thinking he probably hadn't felt pain receptors in that arm for a long time, so that probably made him feel like he did it.
And then, of course, when he at first it seemed everything was gonna be okay, but then he started to have a little bit of a conniption when he realized he can't reach his superior, who's already just going to go out to test this formula out on veterans who probably deserve a little bit of time to relax and not have to be guinea pigs for this untested formula.
Yeah, and what's funny is he can be reasonable and sweet, but he also can be super psychotic. There's a funny part when he's tripping out from his hand changing, and he tells the driver just drive, and the guy's like, "Okay, man." And what's funny is that, and also I love his back and forth with Irfan Khan's character, talking about the whole Norman Osborn's dying. He doesn't have time. All men die, even Norman Osborn. But and they like to imply it or something secret with the whole thing. Is that what you told the boy about his father, or what did you really tell him? Stuff like that. Like, oh, there's stuff going on.
Forget about it. Sony's not going to focus on it.
But yeah, I thought again. What's funny is that they kind of do this weird thing where the more he takes the formula, the more his inner demons have more strength. And it's like, you're not gonna stop us, Peter Parker, which some people might misconstrue as thinking, oh, it's kind of like the split personality stuff like the Green Goblin, right? Well, I don't think it's that per se. I think they're literally just giving.
It's more like Jekyll and Hyde almost.
Yeah, but it's not like, which the Green Goblin was too, but it's not like that.
Well, Jekyll and Hyde didn't talk to himself, honestly.
But yeah, he was well aware of his actions as the Lizard and everything. It's not like the Lizard was a completely separate personality like the Goblin was from Norman. So that's the key difference I think I see right there. So, but yeah,
the rush of having the that much of a form and having all that power and agility and adrenaline kind of cooked a little bit of a thought in the Doctor's mind that this could just be something that goes beyond repairing missing limbs or tissues. This could actually be leading to an evolution to humankind.
yeah, the whole a world without weakness, like all these, like you said in his deranged state, all these people out there suffering and helpless. I can help them. I could cure them.
Which, of course, is a feat that like even Peter Parker discovers in his hunt for the uncle's killer, but he discovers it in a different way, and like the saving of one simple life, a young kid, far younger than him even. It's like such a powering, emotive reaction that he decides like this is a responsibility I should take. I should actually use my powers to actually help others instead of helping myself.
That's what's at stake here. Not choice, responsibility.
Whereas the lizard has been pushed aside and had his genius kind of be like taken for granted for like a sick ailing old man, and the fact that he's now feeling like far more stronger than him, he feels like an amputee of all people feels stronger than this like aging
Multi-millionaire.
multimillionaire. Gives a little bit of a receding thought to like I am stronger, therefore this is better.
Yeah. So you're right. Both Spider-Man and the Lizard were granted gifts through science, and one chose to do it to help others in need, and one thought, to impose his will on others. It's kind of like Doc Ock and Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. Now I think about it, intelligence is not a privilege; it's a gift. It's to be used for the good of all mankind, and I think that's what Connors is going for. But I think his animal instinct, his primal rage took over. But it's not like he's a raving beast. There is some thought going on in his eyes. With that, especially that big one. When you see he's working things out. When he looks at you, see he's working things out. Yeah, I know that to make a dinosaur reference. People keep saying stuff like, "Oh, there's a giant dinosaur stalking New York," and we gotta probably bring this up because we probably not bring it. But one of the best scenes involving the lizard is the scene that also showcases Spider-Man doing spider tactics, where to get a picture of the lizard, he decided to get a web down there and make a bunch of web lines like an actual spider's web, and you have all these little lizards crawling along the web line to set off his vibrations.
And it all builds up to this moment where we actually get to see the lizard fully in like broad light instead of the quick flashes in shadowy bridge, with the this close up to see his hands growing more claw and reptilian.
What's funny though is the fact that they kind of play halfsies with the fan base and do like, okay, we kind of got him in the lab coat at times, and then usually it'll get shot off or blown off by him getting bigger. But they compromise by actually giving us the lizard with the purple pants and the lab coat like he's drawn in the McFarlane era. But because that's always some people said this like, he had the coat on for like 2 seconds before the cops blow it to hell. But yeah, so since I said the quote, we should probably talk about how poor Peter Parker was perceived to be alone, but he's not alone because he had a support staff that was interesting. So we all know that one of the most important figures in his life is his Uncle Ben, which this one is brought to life by the great Martin Sheen, a wonderful actor. In fact, when I first heard his casting, when they were talking about casting this movie, I was already on board with that because I had seen him and stuff, and the guy is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Mm-hmm.
It is definitely a different take on the kind of nurturing grandpa-like notion with Cliff Robertson, but Martin Sheen is definitely the uncle that's not going to take shit from anybody. Like,
What's great?
If there's like something wrong that goes down, he's gonna tell you like up and down in alphabetical order how all the ways that you just messed up.
But not in a malicious way, but because he loves you. I think everybody has had a relative, be it a father or an uncle, like Uncle Ben, which is why he's so endearing. Like I love him bringing his old bowling trophies and stuff like that. Like he's just so quirky, but he also has that like I love the bit when he's throwing a stick to him and saying, "So who do I have? So who? What about the other kid, the guy who hit you? I know a right hook when I see one." Saying stuff like, "Do I have to call somebody's father?" Just the way he says it, I thought, "Oh, that's." Again, I had an uncle who was kind of like Uncle Ben, actually, now that I think about it. My Uncle Martin was very, very similar in terms of like being there and being very quirky and silly, but also when needed to be a stern figure, not like strict, but push come to shove, he had to like show some authority, it is definitely that vein. So seeing Martin Sheen do that role was really well with the little role they gave him. But when he does say things, you go, it's funny how they try to go out of their way to not make him say the most iconic line.
I mean, to be fair, like the line itself originated from a narration as opposed to someone actually saying it.
But the vibe is still there because he said it when your father had a philosophy that whenever you had the ability to do something, another because you had responsibility.
You had a moral obligation to do something about it.
That's what's at stake here, not choice, but responsibility. And I love the way he delivers that line. And plus, what's great is he does have good back and forths with Parker, like where you can see that. Yes, I love when he says, "I know he's a blue collar worker. Like I know I'm not as smart as you. Like I stopped being able to help you with your homework at 10, but
because also if I were to also kind of be in defense of this movie, the whole notion of Uncle Ben taught me where great power goes with great responsibility, that all came from the 2002 movie. Like that was never like nobody never not once not it was never even retconned in any of the comics that anyone even ever said that.
Yeah, although that's a running joke too. Hey, come on, you said it yourself. A great power comes. No, don't say it. Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to that one. But oh my gosh, it is kind of heartbreaking when he does go out into the
it's such
field.
a very quick, very violent way. It's like to be fair with the 2002 one, we only ever saw it in the flashback in the third movie. But even then, like the implication is like if we weren't stupid, we were able to put two together that Uncle Ben was like in a car. The guy needed a car. He said no, and then he got shot for his toes and left on the side of the road while the car is gone. He's just laying there to die.
And this one, the dude was just ripping off a convenience store for some beers. Didn't even arm rob the place, run away, and then he trips and his gun comes out, and Ben's thinking, "Oh shit, this guy's got a gun," and his instinct was to lunge at the guy and try to take the gun from him. And of course, they ended up unfortunately getting
as I said, this was a guy that didn't take shit from nobody.
Well, yeah.
To see the fact that this guy is running around with the gun doesn't even look like he's the. I mean, have you seen the guy? Guy doesn't look like he's on the up and up.
So, I like it was very. Some people might call him stupid for that, but he says I love that funny bit. Okay, Derek will never let me live it down. Every time I bring this up, when he keeps saying the line, and he's like, "Why do you guys love skateboards?" Because he's young and stupid. Do you remember maybe when we were young and stupid? You're like, no, I don't need to be reminded that trouble exists.
Ugh.
But
you guys don't know.
Linkara,
your innocence is saved.
No, yes. But there was another great moment I loved. It's kind of can be considered chunky exposition, but it's so cute with the way Martin delivers it when he's talking about the whole briefcase. I was with your dad. We were walking down Fifth, and we saw that briefcase, and I'm like, what is a 19-year-old with a briefcase? But you know who sold him that case? It was your mother. Just the way he delivers it, you're going. I think I audibly went during our viewing for that story.
No, actually, I think I did. I was the one that went odd.
We both went on because it's this the way Martin delivered it, and he does have a good back and forth with Sally Field as his Aunt May, who's a little more less the shrill, going to die at any minute Aunt May that Rosemary Harris and the comic version was. She's more in line with like the Ultimate line where she's a little more on the up and up. She's not exactly oblivious to Parker being strange, but she's not gonna what can she do about it? He's a moody teen. But yeah, and she does take it hard, after Ben is dead, how she'd have to
composure while they're asking her questions.
And I think Derek thought that was really realistic. So then, because Sally Field is a Class A actress, everything she's done, she's been buffo. So the fact that she handled Aunt May this way, I thought was well done. Like it makes sense that she's not a 100-year-old, And again, this is no disrespect to Rosemary Harris's portrayal, but a lot of people who read the comics always thought that was weird that you got this 20-something teen with grandparents who are probably going to be dead in like a span of a decade. So, but sliding time saves them, sliding time scales. But so she does feel like an aunt, and I did have an aunt who was a lot like May in this movie. Of course, even my mom's a little like that. She was also a nurse, and this Aunt May was a nurse. And one of the better interactions I thought was when Uncle Ben was scolding Parker for getting too caught up in his science stuff that he forgot to pick up his aunt. And I was like, you know what happened? You know, you're. I love the part with like my wife, your aunt. She had to go and walk alone in the dark in the train and all this stuff. And he does. He's okay. The hell he ain't. Like he just. I like how he's furious, but not in a overbearing way, but understandably upset because he promised he'd do that, and then when with Ben gone, you can tell that she doesn't want to lose Peter either, because she knew that Richard Parker was a bit of a odd guy and doesn't want him to go down that way. And also the fact that one of the most tensest scenes in the movie is when he comes back home after another night of vigilanting, and she's like asking him, "Where do you go? Why do you look like this?" And he's telling her to sleep, and she does the whole "I can't sleep," and there's like a tea kettle going on to highlight the tension at the same time. Like she's not bitchy, because some people could say, "Oh, she's being a little too naggy," but no, but she's understandably, protective of him because, again, she just lost Ben, and you're gonna lose someone that was trusted. She lost her sister-in-law and brother-in-law and sister as well, so it's like not gonna lose another member of this family. She's gonna, like, hell if she'll let that happen again. So you can see why she's a little more doting on Peter this time around, but. And she's the one that gives him the warning of secrets have a cost, and your dad was a very secretive man. They're never free. Like that actually is a very, ominous line and everything. Little warning.
Yeah, but when Ben is gone, the way May has to handle seeing Peter come home every single night looking like he's broken and battered. It just kind of leaves her to stay in questions like, is, is this is it something that I'm doing? It's, like, not doing enough. It's like, why go out and like try to like are you just picking fights just because?
And hell, again, another well acted scene again we thought was when he finally does come home with the eggs after he forgot it in an earlier scene. And I like it how she's just like Uncle Ben when Gwen comes to go visit after the funeral, and she shows up. So who was that girl? She's pretty. Like that's exactly what Uncle Ben said. Even he pointed out, but Uncle Ben thought so too. But I love what she said. Like, why did you go with her? So, I'm not good enough for her. And she says, "Oh, Peter Parker. If there's anything you are good." Like I thought that is the most aunt mom thing to ever say. Like that's how my mom would tell me if I said like I'm not good enough. That's why I kind of like her version of Aunt May in this movie. All
Like, she
right.
doesn't have the gravitas, as we said, that Rosemary had, but it was still another. It was kind of like a really, really, really like fresh heartache of losing the man that she loved so much that like managed to keep everything in check in the household.
There was another great moment where when Parker just got the spider bite and he's going through a massive feeding frenzy and taking everything out of the freezer and the meatloaf and everything like that. Like, oh my god, this meatloaf beats all meatloafs. And he goes like, something's really wrong. Yeah, nobody likes your meatloaf. And after Parker leaves, why didn't you tell me you liked my meatloaf? 20
I've been
years,
making
man.
meatloaf for like 37 years.
That's funny. How many meatloafs have I made? And like, what? And then we laughed at Ben saying, "Ooh, Ben, you never ever criticize your wife's cooking in front of her." But oh man. So we probably should mention this other fella in the thing. Then Leary as Captain George Stacy, who's not Cromwell this time. James Cromwell this time. Right,
So
Lenny?
this George Stacy is kind of almost in a way our J. Jonah Jameson, as who just sees Spider-Man as like
Come on.
a sort of figure of discontent, a malcontent, as it were, and it is kind of different to have a different, like, whereas J.K. Simmons played it up as like a cartoonish, outlandish sort of man that just barks out like every single complaint towards Spider-Man, saying, "Oh, the talk's going down. That's Spider-Man that did it." I'll tell you that much.
But yeah, Stacy makes sense because he is a cop, and we all know that cops usually have a little bit of an iffy situation when someone thinks that they can take the laws in their hand, and he's not being an asshole about it.
Like, the dude's a captain, for God's sakes. You have to got a standard for his whole station.
And plus, his family, he is a great family man. I like how they establish that when he's trading bars with Parker, but then you see scenes of him talking to Gwen, like, "Come on, I'll give you cocoa." But he's like, "Oh," and it's funny that's Dennis Leary because the guy does stand up and he has a lot of not safe for work stand up that makes me laugh. So it's funny that they got him in this family film as this. Well, again, he was in family films before. He was Diego in the Ice Age movies.
And also having his own stand-up of having to need a cigarette every 5 minutes.
Yeah. So his what's funny is he does have some snark. Like for example, when Parker was trying to say there's a giant lizard in New York, he's going like, "Oh, like okay, listen, you hang out with the citizens of Tokyo while I go ahead and help the citizens of New York." Okay, I'm laughing about that. And another Dennis Leary line is when he says the whole like Dr. Kirk Connors is dressed up like a dinosaur. He's the guy who wrote my daughter's recommendation letter. It was the most beautiful recommendation letter I ever read. I cried. Just the way he delivers it makes me laugh. Also, another good Dennis Leary role is his role as the fugitive Edgar Friendly in Demolition Man that Wesley Snipes is hired to kill. Because he has a great rap.
He was also the ladybug, Francis, in Bug's Life.
In Bug, oh god. So, big about Alex McSherry girl, huh? Is that it, Flyboy? So
hey
he has
there,
that
girly bug. Shoot fly, don't bother me.
yeah, stuff like that. So he's great as again, one of the best scenes with him is when they go to the dinner with the Stacys and he just starts talking about work and about the Spider Person and Peter inadvertently starts trading bars with him, saying, "I think he's doing a job, right?" Well, this guy has no strategy. And strategy, I'm sure you're talking. He explains pretty much how Spider-Man acting out on his own ruins police investigations.
Like
he didn't think about that.
The moment with the you get probably with me. That's the small knives.
The car thief, yeah.
But it turns out that car, like, why did he get guys off the street like him? If I wanted the car thief off the street, I would have had him off the street.
He was leading him to someone bigger, to suppliers, and this spider guy just crashed in like a wild bull and threw 6 months of investigation out the window. Like even Parker had to look up, like, "Oops." He says, "Why think he's trying to help people?" And he goes, "Well, why does he keep going after specific individuals with similar descriptions? Like he's hunting for someone." So again, I like how
and then it led to a high manhunt for Spider-Man, which like the trailers kind of definitely built up. Was like, oh, the dude's gonna be hunted down.
Or because he was blamed for being on the site during the lizard attacks during the bridge. So that's only when they put the APB on arresting Spider-Man. But you gotta love.
But even then, like when he just does discover that Spider-Man was like literally the boy that Gwen is pining for, like it definitely kind of reeled it back a little bit. The fact that like you knew that was like gonna be hunting you down, you still like wanted to come close to me. Like I don't know if that's stupid or gutsy, kid.
Also, what I love is that Gwen has this whole line to Peter. She knows the look that she says that there's always that ever since she was a little girl, there was always that worry that Dad would put on that badge and go out, and there might be a day he never comes back. That's kind of what he knows when he puts on that badge. That's what she says. She's seeing that same pattern with Peter when he's putting on that mask. He's coming back home with big claw marks across his chest and stuff like that. By the way, those claw mark things from the sewer attack were gnarly. We're like, yee.
You're disgusting. It's like, dude, I don't think like a little bit dab of cloth is gonna fix that. I know that's usually like a thing you don't want to do in superhero movies, to go directly to the hospital, but this is a high class hospital visit needed.
On top of that, he was in sewer water, so that probably doesn't help for the infection. Maybe his spider genes help make him not get sick, but yeah, I thought that again, he's antagonistic, but he's not a jerk about it, and you do feel for him that when he does turn around and actually tell the police to don't fire on Spider-Man and to actually assist him. That's a really good turnaround. It doesn't feel like a cheap, oh, well, I'm on your side but again, I think his most moving scene is when he does save Spider-Man from the lizard, but gets mortally wounded in the process, and does the whole "you're gonna have enemies, kid." So that's all he asks. One thing, just I like how he's like, the city's gonna need you. I was wrong. Like the city does need Spider-Man, but all he asks is just leave Gwen out of this. That's his only request. But I like how even he knows that there's a reason why you need a Spider-Man when you got guys like Connors, and he knows that things are going to change. So he's all like, "Yeah, the city needs you." Like I like how he went from this guy's a menace to the city needs you. I think that's a natural progression the way they handled it.
But quickly going back to the relationship between Spidey and Lizard, there was also a moment after Lizard's first transformation where he's kind of like deciding to send off everyone to the off break for a week, and he's leaving the office. He kind of essentially warns Peter indirectly, or rather directly, that this new species
Dangerous when threatened.
aggressive and threatened.
It's like saying back off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he know Peter was the Spider-Man? He didn't know until I think he knew for sure once he got the camera, property of Peter Parker.
It was definitely more of like nosy nobody shouldn't look into anything they're not needed with.
Yeah. So that was funny when he left the camera with his name on it, and that's when he found him. And we forgot to mention that fight at the school led to one of the most funniest Stan Lee cameos ever.
Yeah, where he's the librarian, put away books, and he has these huge headphones on.
So we can't hear the war going behind him.
And it's literally a huge fight scene going on behind him. And it's like, blissfully unaware, but it's like such a very daring fight scene where he almost got hit. Like
by
twice.
A flying bookcase, yeah. And you got this cheery orchestral music as he's walking out. It's a really funny scene. But like I said, it is great when Dennis Leary does have a good back and forth with Emma Stone as well. So yeah, it was his death scene was really well done, I thought. So others of note. Oh, we should probably mention Chris Zilka as a minor character, but still has a big part. Flash Thompson.
Yeah, so we mentioned Flash in the first movie, and it was kind of like a very jockish, very typical bully that had a pretty big standoff against the nerd and getting trounced when he has the superpowers. And then he gets dumped by Mary Jane, and that's the last we ever see of him in the series ever.
Until the funeral with Harry Osborn. He was there. Joe Manganiello did come back just to be an extra in that scene. So even Flash came to Harry's funeral.
Oh. But yeah, so this Flash is like, he's not aggressively picking up Peter Parker. He might throw an occasional basketball like accidentally towards his way, but he'll just kind of like double back and say, "Oh, sorry about that."
So yeah, he does.
He is seen picking on like other kids and like egging Peter on to take a picture of like his axe. But he just gets touchy when someone uses his real name,
Eugene. So of course, but what's great about this guy though is that even that he got humiliated by him after Spider Powers with the basketball scene, which was very funny. He would take the ball from him, but after Uncle Ben dies, he completely sympathetic to the guy. Where even he's like, "Not today, Flash," and he like pins him to the wall, and he tells him, "Feels good, huh?" Because like it sucks what happened to you.
Your uncle died. Sorry, man.
Like, it's cool that he was actually, sympathetic to Parker's plight.
But like some version of Flash Thompson is like that, so.
And yeah, and what's funny is that this was always a dynamic from the comics where because near the end of the movie, when Spider-Man was getting viral and getting traction, he sees Flash with a Spider-Man shirt, and he says, "I think he's kind of cool." And people are saying that's the thing from the comics where he'll like gush about how awesome Spider-Man is and say, "Hey, Parker, you're a dork." Like in the old comics, and they kind of play that up with the recent iterations of Flash. But in that one, yeah, it was nice to see that going that way. I think it felt like they were going to go more with Zilka as Flash, because at that point in the comics, they were doing the Agent Venom stuff.
And by the end of the movie, when Spider-Man is being touted as the big hero, you can see that Flash is definitely inspired by Spider-Man. Even in most iterations, Flash adores Spider-Man, but picks on Peter Parker. It's kind of like this ironic dynamic.
But here he actually kind of goes a little more friendly toward Parker. So I think it would have been fascinating to see that develop further if they kept his Flash around.
Yeah, but yes, but as it is, he definitely like had a pretty okay, pretty good standing to be the obstacle that Peter overcomes, and like it does lead to Uncle Ben having his fume against Peter. It's like, oh, it's like, does it feel good to pick on him?
Yeah, he humiliated you, so did you send it back to him? But yeah, I love that bit with that. You can pay for the baseboard. I don't care about the baseboard. Is it true that you humiliated that kid? So I like that. Yeah, he was made an ass of by Parker, and Uncle Ben didn't see no honor in that. But again, now Flash versus Flash. Which Flash do you think left a more of an impression on you between the two Flashes? The Joe Manganiello Raimi Flash, or the Zilka's Amazing Flash?
The Zilkos definitely has a little bit of a rage issue. Like the Macho has the same rage issue too, but it feels like he just like is always like aggressive for no
Oh, yeah,
reason.
yeah. He's hyper aggressive. Yeah, the Raimi Flash was hyper
But
aggressive.
this one is like you set him off, and the dude is just gonna go off on anybody. Even if like the bell went off, I had a little bit suspicion that he was also gonna throw a bit of a punch towards Gwen.
But yeah,
she stood up against him.
But yeah, I like that. I love when she's talking back with the whole like, I saw your results and I'm very disappointed. Like that was funny. So, but yeah, I thought that the evolution of him was pretty well done, and I bet you if they were going to go with their full universe plan, eventually they might have had him become Agent Venom. I bet.
Who knows, honestly.
All right, and other standouts from the cast. Well, let's see. We already mentioned them. Uh, yeah, like Ifran Khan as Dr. Gurtha, as the one that was pushing Connor's buttons. I gotta actually get his name because I don't want to like I have it right here. But Ifran Khan, who rest in peace. But yeah, I know him best as Mr. Masrani in the Jurassic World series. But yeah, he was Raja Ratha, and Webb described him as a fan of the actor when he saw him. Khan said he was interested in the project first, but his sons were excited, so he took the role because of his sons. How cute. He's the only other major standout. Like Norman Osborn was portrayed in Shadow, and of course we have determines that I appeared.
What else is there?
Oh, there's yeah, there's really another. I think we mentioned every major character. Oh, there's one other person we probably got to mention, and he's probably low that I'll make this joke, but Dotson, we got Dotson here. Nobody cares.
Dude, nobody cares.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because this is Richard Campbell, has Campbell Scott as Richard Parker, and I only say that because recently in the Jurassic World Dominion movie they casted Richard Campbell as Dotson because the actual actor got in trouble and put in jail, so uh, he was supposed to be Dotson, going for a Steve Jobs vibe, and I made that Dotson joke every damn time he was on a computer monitor. Ask Derek. But he actually is fascinating because he does have like this moody secrets thing going on for sure. Like he's not even telling much people. Like he's like erasing boards ominously, but he's not like a supervillain, mind you. But I just thought that We'll actually have to talk about more about him in the next one because he actually has more to chew on in the next one. But he's there to tell Parker be good, and the decay rate algorithm and this and that with Connors and everything. So, but he at least seeing a life model decoy robot that drives Spider-Man insane, like that one twist where they found out, oh, the Parkers did come back, but they were actually robots, and the real Parkers were still out there. I mean, the parents of Peter are either dead or out in limbo. It's always weird in the comics when you try to look that up.
Mm.
Or as Ankara famously says every time, comics are weird. So, is there anything you want to throw on about Scott's performance as Richard Parker?
Yeah, he does seem a little bit standoffish. Like it's like I don't think there's ever been a scene in this movie or the next one that showed any flashback of him being a very caring father. With
That would
like
probably be
just
the
just a
second
just
one.
a father figure, really.
But I love how he's only there to be a frame of reference for even like when Uncle Ben sees him, like, wow, he looked just like it when he puts on the glasses.
And to an extent, he really does look like Andrew with the glasses on. So
Yeah, I think Andrew takes a lot more cues from the mom who plays, Mary Parker. Who, oh my gosh, she doesn't even get a spot on this thing because she only has like one or two lines, and then boop.
because it was
I
all
feel
it was all about the father. That's like all. That's all it was about the father.
Thankfully she does get a little more to do in the next one. I say they're gone, they're dead. Like, yeah, but we'll get to that when we get to that in the second one because they actually have an extended flashback scene.
But
But
needless to say, it was Richard's data that literally leads to the big domino effect that Pierce sets off just in a big grand design to kind of get closer to getting like what made his dad tick in a way, like how he managed to get like the same like scientific genius that he has.
oh yeah, and everyone kept saying that, yeah, your dad was a smart man, and he was very secretive. That was all we can get out of him. So that's why he's kind of secretive in this review too, because well, we don't have much to go off of, and we probably would have if we go with a longer cut. But
It's
let's
time
get to
for
this
a
next part.
new segment, which I like to call "What if Sony wasn't nosy?" Get it?
Yeah,
Spelled nosy with Nosy, anagram of
and
Sony.
Sony.
Anyways, so
Yeah.
as we mentioned this, like even the trailers, there's always been like this push for this movie to be like the untold story that's now like being discovered for the first time. Where they want to tell the story origin of Peter Parker to be a little bit more like, what if it wasn't like an accidental chance? What if like things were set in place to lead us to this moment?
Oh yeah.
And so like there was like aspects of the story where in certain cuts, not only did Kirk Connors had another reason why he wanted to regain his limbs so that he could be kind of like a normal father to his own son in a way.
Oh yeah. You can see all these in the deleted. There's a lot of deleted scenes on the Blu-ray, and it's not even all of them.
But there's also the fact that in the original cut, the Kirk Connors lizard wasn't as aggressive as he was. In fact, at some points, whenever Kirk Connors is back, he's kind of honestly afraid of his lizard-like appearance, which is very indicative of what the comics and the other media show. Because either these are like two distinct figures. One is like a brilliant scientist. The other is like the aftermath of him trying to obtain something that he's lost. And in that quest, it led to a very monstrous, like extreme, like bad scenario ever.
And there's even that part in the trailer where he says a little more ominous lines, stuff like "It's time to play God," stuff like that.
Like
And then you got,
even notes in like certain scenes how he's afraid, like afraid that Peter might find out. But even like his lizard half kind of counters with like, why should I? I'm literally stronger, faster. I have teeth. I have claws, and I have a doctorate from Empire University. I'm beautiful, aren't I?
and I'm sure Reese and Fonz had a fun time hamming it up for that part. Oh, so it's what's funny. We mentioned Irif Khan as Dr. Ratha. Well, he does have another scene, and it's in the trailer too. He's telling Parker, "Do you have any idea what you really are?" To imply there's something really major going on there. And then Lizard comes out of nowhere and eats him while Parker watches. That
Yeah,
deleted scene just cuts off right there, and I'm going. So what's the follow up on that look like?
so, let's just say that the camera never pans left.
Yeah, it's just funny because it's like Lizard comes up, grabs him, growls at Ratha, opens his mouth, bites the camera, and then deleted scene's over. I'm like, okay, so we're gonna follow up on that. Like that, what Parker doesn't jump in? Does he escape? Like it's just so funny to me. But yeah, he has a whole scene. There's this whole big mystery about what Parker's dad did and everything. And even the other commercials were like really. Oh, but okay, the nosiness was bad here. Oh boy, you ain't seen nothing. Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Like, to be fair, the cut that we got still managed to actually be a pretty good movie. I'm sure it would have been a lot more stronger had we had stick to what Mark Webb was going for. And to be fair, they were still given like some marks like, okay, we'll still have the whole parents thing. We'll still have like, okay, cross genetics were kind of like a research that Richard intended to be good for, but especially it probably went south at certain aspects if it was going to be used for the wrong intentions. So of course he had to hide it away. The 00 project, as they call it.
Also, it's very nice to finally have a Spider-Man movie where they don't outright kill the bad guy at the end.
Oh yeah. So he gets locked away for his troubles, even though he managed to end up killing the captain of the police force. Doesn't have a death sentence on him.
Well, who knows? But yeah. So the movie did come out, and if I remember, reviews were mostly mixed to positive when it first came out.
Honestly, people were surprised that it ended up being good the way it did. There could have been a lot of wrong that they could have done here.
Yeah, there was a lot.
Like
That
even
could have gone.
behind the scenes, like certain aspects, like if the character wasn't engaging or certain characters didn't click with people, like if we didn't give a shit about Ben when he died, then the whole thing would have kind of fallen flat.
Or Gwen, I think everything I saw back then gave props to the Gwen and Parker dynamic because again, Mark Webb directed those two so naturally, and the effects were praised, of course. I'm sure. But
We do have to admit that a lot of reviews were kind of given compares like a chastening of how Sam did it first and how like certain aspects
or was it too
were
soon to reboot?
like certain things were more in tune with the comic origins in the first movie than in this one and yada yada. But certain aspects like the effects and the actual web slinging action done on set actually did like raise some eyebrows to people. Was like, okay, so they're actually knowing what they're doing here.
So here's numbers. So it earned 262 million in North America, 495 in other countries, worldwide total of 757.9 million, 106 highest grossing film, and seventh highest grossing film of 2012. And it's the fifth grossest Spider-Man film, sixth highest worldwide by Columbia, and the highest grossing reboot of all time worldwide.
But that's definitely a good mark. So
And so they said this though that the Amazing Spider-Man was the last Marvel Comics-based film Roger Ebert reviewed before he died, and he regarded it probably the second best within the entire Spider-Man franchise after Spider-Man 2. Wow, from a
damn,
legend like that.
how about that?
Yeah. So yeah, here's most of them intended 6 weeks, but the science consensus says a well-chosen cast, sure-handed direction allows Amazing Spider-Man to thrill despite revisiting many of the same plot points from 2002 Spider-Man. It's an A minus from a lot of people, but a lot of people kept saying that the emotional and comedic touches were stronger, stronger romance. So a lot of people kept saying, but they're saying that the tediousness comes from the whole mystery thing. I think yeah. So here's a good review.
We kind of overhyped the mystery thing.
Someone said this. So it's from Entertainment Weekly, A minus said it's a friskier, sweeter natured variation compared to Raimi's work. She said that the most amazing element was not the blockbuster wow, but instead the intimate Oz, which we highlighted a lot of. And explain a new Rocket Saga. It stands on its own quite nicely, focusing more on human emotions and then a panoply of special effects. So it was earnest, whereas Garfield's Spider-Man is whip smart and likably cheeky, with an undercurrent of teenage angst. Ain't that the truth? So yeah, it looks like it was mostly well received. Like it was not a bad thing. But here's someone in movie line said, "I had no specific desire to see the series resuscitated, but watching Garfield and so made me think maybe doing so wasn't such a bad idea. So it made it convincingly fresh and exciting. So again, it's really, really good. So Webb even said, I described the story as about a kid who grows up looking for his father and ends up finding himself, which I think is a really good way to describe the themes of this movie.
That's definitely nailing it on the nose. So, wait, hold on.
There's one more thing.
Who the hell is this guy?
Oh yes, there was even an after credit sequence because at this point the MCU was in full swing, pardon the phrase, and after credits of teasing the things to come was the norm at this point. So we get ominous lightning, and we have this fella in a hat and everything telling Dr. Connors if he told the boy about his father. Like that was even in the trailers, man. They put their after credit sequence in the trailers.
So yeah, who is this character based on in the comics exactly?
There is no comic character.
Really? Not even. Oh god, I can't even think of what that guy's name was. He was in the Clone Wars, the Clone Saga.
Judas Traveler.
Yeah, like it would have been funny if it turned out this was a reinvention of Judas Traveler.
And we find out that Andrew Garfield's actually a clone, and that would have led to like Toby joining in the fray or something.
My god, that would have been fucking amazing.
A clone saga.
Hey, pun intended there.
But, oh man, so let me see what they mentioned that guy. Apparently, according to the casting and everything of that guy, he was actually a fellow who worked with Marvel before as the Ultimate Avengers animated Dr. Banner. So yeah, Michael Massey, who previously worked on as Dr. Banner, played the mysterious man in the shadows who talks to Connors in the prison cell. As to the man's identity, even Mark Webb said, it's intentionally mysterious, and I invite speculation. And it was revealed that his name was Gustav Fierce. Who there was a loose name of that with the guy who helped form one of the Sinister Six, I think. Oh, here it is. The gentleman introduced in Andrew Castro's novel Spider-Man: The Gathering of the Sinister Six. His brother Carl Fierce murdered Spider-Man's parents. The gentleman appears in the novel Spider-Man: Revenge of the Secret Sinister Six, and Spider-Man: Secret of the Sinister Six, where he was killed off. He made his debut in the comics continuity in Civil War II Kingpin as part of the Civil War II event. So he came after this movie. So his name came from an obscure, name from an old Spider-Man novel. How about that?
Oh wait, I think I actually might have that novel. It was something with Sinister Six, right?
Yeah, his first appearance was in Spider-Man: The Gathering of the Sinister Six, and he also appeared in The Revenge of the Sinister Six and Secret of the Sinister Six.
Yeah. I have Revenge of the Sinister Six, I think.
So yeah, so that's they just call him the Gentleman, but he's retconned his stuff.
I bought the book like ages ago. I should actually go back and actually read it. I was only able to actually read the first few chapters, and I was like, the only chapter that actually made sense for me to read was seeing the Sinister Six meeting up.
Now it makes sense.
Bringing up Richard Parker, and it's like, wait, is Dad alive? What? Huh? And it's like, it's boring. I'll just put it away.
I guess knowing that he has ties to the Sinister Six, it makes sense what his role in this movie was meant to be. But we'll get more into that in the second one. But oh man, it's so funny. But we were. I still can't believe
we just came up with the more creative direction with the whole Judas Traveler thing. And Judas Traveler was like the dumbest thing to come out of the Clone Saga amidst a gaggle of things.
Well, hell, he was like implying that there's some really big secret reason he's there, and it's never revealed. Like at all. I think they dropped the Judas Traveler stuff at one point. All I know is he looks like Sylvanas from Soul Calibur. That's what I think. So, but I remember everybody was like, "Who the fuck was that?" When the credits happened.
What
Even
kind
in
of
the
kind of scenes was that?
even in the credits, he's listed as Mystery Man. I think.
So
So,
yeah, we brought this MCU that's going on. What's the deal with that? And is that gonna be good or bad for Spidey in the long run?
because at this point, Spider-Man had helped kicked off the superhero genre in the early 2000s, and it evolved and grew until we had Iron Man in 2008, which led the door to Incredible Hulk, which led the door to Iron Man 2, and Captain America eventually and Thor coalescing into the Avengers,
Which
which
came out
everyone.
the same year as the Amazing Spider-Man. So yeah, even though it wasn't the highest grossing film, I think it was a safe bet of who was the highest grossing at the time.
Oh yeah, the Avengers pretty much changed the game. This is an understatement, and all of you know that. All of you listening to this now know how big of a deal the Avengers working was, and that was without their A-list character. So let's face it.
A lot of people were kind of hoping that they might like allude in the Amazing Spider-Man that it would actually lead up to having Spidey involved in Avengers. I mean, it makes sense considering the fact that we had the Incredible Hulk, which is a Universal property, and here he was like gaggling on with the Avengers. So why couldn't Spidey?
Well, we all know that Sony has sole rights to the Spider-Man character property in most mediums, so whatever has to be going through has to be approved by Sony, as we know.
Well,
Oh
I think at this point it was they only had the rights to the movies. Like,
no,
I think
no. They
no,
sold a lot of rights to Sony that they pretty much practically own the entire character, other than the comic stuff, actually.
really, because then what? I like at that time the Ultimate Spider-Man show was going on, and that was like a Disney.
Sony licensed that out.
So you're telling me all these Spider-Man shows like that's not Disney?
Well, yeah, no, yeah, it's Disney, but Sony had to be the guys to sign off on. You can make the Spider-Man show.
Hmm.
When they sold the rights, oof, that's an interesting tangle web all on its own, man. But I'm pretty sure we'll see Spidey swing along the MCU someday, hopefully. And so all of you listening at home are going, we already know how this ends, but come on, let us play a little.
But needless to say, I do have some concerns with the fact that the audiences might like uh be pushing to have like yeah this iteration of Spidey not fare well all in the name of just like okay, so this iteration didn't work out. How about we do this whole MCU thing?
So you think that some people intentionally tried to bomb it, torpedo it on purpose to try to get him back into? Oh, Fantastic
Well,
Four,
definitely the second one.
because the Fantastic Four kind of had floundered eventually to the point where they thought, okay, but you get the rights back. Ghost Rider came back. Like they all eventually went back because the studios thought, we're not getting anything out of this here. You can have it back. And this is before Marvel became the powerhouse that it is now. So yeah. Oh, one other thing to mention is that this was the last film that producer Laura Ziskin produced for the Spider-Man series because she had succumbed to cancer during post-production. But she was the one that pushed for a lot of things to be. I mean, even in the interview tapes talking about Amazing Spider-Man, you can see her with the emaciated hair and little hair tie that undergoes chemo and stuff like that. But they even did like a cancer event in honor of her, to fundraise for cancer, the Spider-Man crew and everything like that. So that's probably better mentioning because she's been there since the Raimi days as a producer.
But yeah, so that was the Amazing Spider-Man, and uh, I might so as I'm usually one to usually go rewatch like the first 2002 Spidey movie just to get a rise and a kick. If I ever felt like the need to revisit Andrew's Spidey, it's like I definitely feel like the first one is the way to go. especially consider the fact that it does feel concise and thought out well enough. The material brought together did still manage to pull off a very interesting, very different origin story for Spider-Man that led to like a very more grounded take, but grounded in the sense that we're still doing like a comic book movie without like being overtly gritty and dark.
Oh, there's another thing too, which probably I mentioned before we go off. There is a video game they made for this to go with this movie, which is kind of a funny video game because it supposedly takes place after the events of the movie.
Yeah, it's a, pseudo sequel essentially. So it covers like the fallout of Kirk Connor's research and like all the cross species genetics and the scientist that's running things now in Connor's place is Alastair Smythe, who many will know him being involved with the Spider Slayers.
I do remember the previews for that game kept showing Spider-Man and those QuickTime events going up with the Spider Slayer and taking out bits of it.
And also encountering cross species genetic versions of iconic Spidey villains, including Rhino and Scorpion.
Which gets kind of weird when you watch the sequel because continuity is not this series' strong suit. I'll say that right now. But I guess you can argue
But
the game.
they did have a very fascinating way of handling the Peter Parker segments, where you don't ever see Peter his face outside his suit. Whenever he's in costume, you can see him in third person, all that interacting with people. But in first person, it's essentially you are Peter Parker. You're able to be there, seeing like all these people, especially Kirk Connors and Emma Stone's portrayal of Gwen Stacy talking to you.
So I guess
Essentially,
they couldn't get the rights to Andrew's likeness. I guess I don't know.
well, I think it was more of like a creative choice to actually make you feel. Again, it's another grounded thing. It's a grounded reality thing where it makes you want to makes you feel like you are Spider-Man. You're a Peter
Also,
Parker.
also people jokingly call this the Arkham Asylum of Spider-Man games because they actually do copy a few segments from the Arkham.
Well, to be fair, Spidey 2 did it first. The plebes.
But the whole like predator mission modes of like capturing certain people in a certain way without getting spotted, or like the counter move being put to the button was very
You mean the Spider Sense button that Spidey 2 and Spidey 1 and pretty much any Spider-Man game invented?
but it's actually more of a parry than a dodge, man. That's what the Arkham button is. But yeah, the Spider-Man game was interesting. But what was funny too was the
Like I did have look at a little bit of a snippet of it in the behind the scenes Blu-ray disc when they were talking about it, and it's funny to look at it and like it's been like wow since I've ever played that game, and looking at it, it's like wow that this looks like a prototype Insomniac Spider-Man game.
well, it's but definitely a better Spider-Man game with the amazing name on it than its successor.
Oof.
Even you, oof.
Amazing Spidey 2 just did not fare well in any regard.
Even you liked this series, and you went oof at that game.
Like I was in denial of the second one. I was just like well let's see, like you can web swing with like both triggers like left and right.
And hey, what's Carnage doing here?
Well yeah, Connor it's it. I don't know. Did you actually play the game?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so uh, Spidey actually had to break him out of jail so that he can Connors can actually help him out, figure out the epidemic that's going on. Because not only are the cross genetics out, but they also have this a little bit of disease going on in them. If anyone gets bitten, that they might gain a animalistic features on them.
Yeah,
So
I heard that
yeah,
around it, Gwen.
so yeah, pretty much New York City is under quarantine essentially.
Oh, the word quarantine makes you probably have flashbacks every night. You're like, oof.
But to be fair, the newer Spider-Man game did delved with that too, but it was like a more direct plague that was spread on the city.
Speaking of which, I'm going to be having a new system on board. I'm able to play that game remastered, hopefully.
Yes, congratulations, you're upgrading. You're going up the world.
Also, it has the amazing suit, which is part in the phrase, an amazing suit.
Yeah.
I'm sure
So,
you
but
was up.
like honestly, like I felt it was like the last good licensed movie Spidey game, essentially that Beanox handled. And Beanox actually handled a lot of pretty good Spidey games. Shattered Dimensions, one of them.
But yeah, I
Like
understand. So my thoughts on this movie, looking back at it again, is I after a while I end up quoting Thanos way too often. Perhaps I treated you too harshly, like because I actually rewatched it about a
I've
couple.
like see, I had a little bit more of a connection with this movie than the other Spider-Man movies because I grew up watching the original trilogy as a kid. When Amazing Spider-Man came around,
You were like
I
the
was
right
literally
age.
I was like in senior year when the movie was in production. I remember showing everyone the Andrew Garfield picture, and some of them liked it. Some of them like kind of looks like Edward Cullen a little bit, and they were in a joking fashion. They were really hateful
I
on it.
remember that
But
too.
I was essentially fresh off. I knew what high school was like, and to see Andrew dealing with that and being in his own, like I kind of resonated with that, even though I was like uh, being high with my friends at the time. So
But yeah,
essentially, I knew where Andrew and what the film were going with this portrayal of Spider-Man, and it felt like I could have been Spider-Man at that point
that's
instead of like
great.
this being this geeky like Tobey Maguire, easy to cry at things type of portrayal. But I admit I did kind of like to fro and ebb and fro of like who was my favorite, Toby versus Andrew. It's like Toby is like it's like he's kind of like awkward and like cries a lot and is emotive, but Andrew just feels like he's the guy that's just trying to get like has all these things going on, juggling between him and having to kind of like steel himself and anchor himself, even though he realizes he's got like freaking powers of Spider that he can like clear on walls and like understand how to build a freaking like web shooter. It's just you're still trying to like live life a little bit.
But yeah, like I said, I rewatched these movies about a year or two ago, even before No Way Home, just to watch them because I bought them on Blu-ray again, and I seeing them with new eyes, I thought I could see what they were going for, and I really did enjoy revisiting the ride this time around. I think I remember harshing your buzz at times when you were propping that film back in the day, so I apologize in advance for that all that.
I understand. It's like you're there are a lot of people that couldn't let go of like the old guard.
Would it be the
But like
first time?
even some things you had to admit, like no no, no offense on Bryce Dallas Howard, but she just didn't get the Gwen Stacy that was in the comics. This Emma Stone managed to get that.
I think her portrayal, well, we'll probably explain it in the sequel, but I think her portrayal led to the character getting a bigger resurgence than ever. But oh man, yeah, I really did enjoy rewatching it with you, and I think I do really like what they were going for. And there's things that are appreciative now. Like, it's funny when you look at things in your rearview mirror and go, "Oh, this actually wasn't so bad or so good." Once you take it, look at it from older eyes, it'd be like when you're a kid, you'd be like, "Eh," and then when you're an adult, you'd be like, "Oh, it's kind of like that with me." And there's still some things that don't work due to Sony's nosing about, but for them, a lot of it does work. And
This one suffered the least. Let's just say it.
oh man, we're gonna
We'll get to the one that really like got a sucker punch to the face.
yeah really screwed the pooch on that one. But again, I saw this in theaters and I was okay with it. Wasn't too wowed, but watching it now, I'm going,
I honestly grew up like it felt like uh, they played it too safe with this movie, but now I feel like no, they did enough that it's still grounding newcomers into it while giving something new to people who have like already been around the band with the whole Spider-Man craze.
On top of that, I think seeing that it ended up living a short life as a franchise makes you appreciate it more.
And
I
the
mean,
fact that the No Way Home helped garner people to look back on Andrew and realizing the dude was honestly a great Spider-Man. Why did we give this guy so much shit?
what changed my tune on him was finally watching him in a great movie like Hacksaw Ridge, where oh my god, the guy brought me to tears with how great his portrayal was in that movie. So again, Andrew was an up and comer. He was given the dream role because I remember someone showed a picture of that Andrew shared of him as a young boy. Uh, was it him or was it or was it Tom
I know Tom had a pretty much a Spidey suit, and also the iconic photo of him having the first gen
Halloween?
Spider-Man figure wrapped around his eyes like a mask.
Some of them had like a Halloween costume of Spider-Man and ended up growing up being Spider-Man. I think that one was Andrew.
I do believe Andrew did have that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's funny that and the guy got to live the dream role. Most of us wouldn't even dream of like be able to dream of having that. You got to be Spider-Man, and people will actually like I showed this movie at a screening with my parents on my projector, and even they thought, "Oh, the kid was pretty good." You're surprised by him,
Mhm.
and so again, I think time has actually been kind to this Spider-Man movie, as people see it as an interesting attempt with the many iterations we're getting, with the many TV projects and the many movies, crossovers, and spin-offs. When you look at the simpler times of the Raimi films, and you see the sea change happening with the Amazing films, it really is interesting to look at. And Mark Webb, I think he did make a movie he should be proud of there, and I'm glad we're talking about it here on its 10th anniversary. Still saying, wow, they really did try something. So, I mean, I don't know what the movie landscape would have been like if they didn't even do it at all, or if it had exploded, backfired horribly. But thankfully, it didn't.
And I'm honestly glad we have a movie like this. Just essentially when chips went down and like we weren't gonna see the continued adventures of Tobey Maguire, we were able to still have a Spider-Man in our lifetime to grow up with
You might
in
find
the
this weird,
older age.
but to go back to our good friend James Bond, if Toby was a bit of a Moore with a little Connery flair to it in terms of iconicness, then would it be too much of a stretch to say that Andrew Garfield was kind of like the Dalton of the run?
I felt he was more like a pure Bronson.
Pierce Brosnan, yeah. But I'm not just saying just because Dalton only had two films, but Dalton played it with a more earnest approach, but a little more. He still had the charm, but he had that killer instinct at the same time. So I think the same thing with Andrews Peter is that he can do the quips, he can be quick witted and smart, but at the same time there's a little bit of a undercurrent of grief and agony, which you kind of got that with License to Kill and with Dalton. I know. I'm a Bond fanatic, so that's why I thought I'd make that comparison. But uh, no, Spider-Man hasn't found his Daniel Craig. I find that funny to say. But if anyone's like Pierce Brosnan, I probably would have to give that to the new kid on the block. But it's funny because Holland himself said he wanted to play James Bond at some point. He says, "I pitched a very horrible take of how I would do James Bond Jr. to Sony, and they actually listened to me, but I think they're not going to do it." He said for sure because even I admit it was kind of stupid how I pitched it. He said jokingly to himself. I keep forgetting that.
Give it some time. I think he could actually do it, especially since the dude can actually do stunts on his own.
Oh yeah. So, but Andrew,
You just gotta grow out of his baby face, as it were.
yes, for sure.
But in quotes.
But oh my gosh, Andrew grew as an actor. I think Spider-Man was good for him, but I think the stuff he's done since then is wow. Like 99 Homes with Michael Shannon, just wow. Again, this kid became someone on my watch list to go like. He's not a kid no more, but I funny that I keep saying kid, but he really elevated his roles. And when he came back later, it was just almost like an old friend. Like I can't believe I would. Who would have thought me bashing Amazing Spider-Man 10 years ago will be one of those guys who cheered loudest when he hopped through that portal. Everyone likes a comeback. So yeah, I guess with that, it's a good way to say our thoughts on it. So next
time
time,
we come back, we will see his greatest battle begins, but it also ends.
yeah, we'll be talking about the rise of Electro in Amazing Spider-Man 2 next time, and I think we're going to have a lot longer segment of Sony nosing about in that one.
Yeah. Meantime, I'm gonna have to really work on a thumbnail for that one. That one's a big talk about that one. That one's gonna need a little bit more detail work.
Oh, they threw almost everything and the kitchen sink into this thing, man. All right then. So until next time, true believers.
Excelsior!
Catch you at the next one.